Hi, hi, everyone. This is Caroline with the Expat Interviews, Thriving Abroad, where we get an opportunity to talk with the most amazing, awesome, daring, adventurous people that are living their best life all over this globe. And today we're going all the way over to Asia to talk with an amazing woman who, when you hear her story, you're just going to be just as open mouth and shocked as I was to hear just the beautiful language that she has mastered. Thank you, Diana, for joining me.
Thank you,
And
Caroline.
you have just kind of left me speechless too. I was so excited to get the opportunity to talk with you because, you're someone that we don't get, let's face it, we don't get to see, amazing people like you every day. Someone who has left their
Oh,
country and you have mastered a language that most people in their lifetime could never imagine being able to speak Chinese.
Caroline, no, I haven't mastered it. I am still climbing up the mountain, the Mandarin Mount Everest mountain. It is a process. I have to be humble with that. It's a process.
I saw you I saw you do a contest. You were involved in I
Mhm,
believe it was for Toastmasters, was it?
mhm, mhm.
And as far as I'm concerned, you mastered it.
Oh,
There were native speakers there that that were just so impressed with what you're saying. So in my eyes, and I'm sure in the eyes of others, you are a master. So tell us a little bit about your expat journey, Diana. Let's start. Where are you from originally?
okay, I'm originally from the suburbs of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And for those who are international listeners, that is smack dead in between New York and Washington D.C. on the northeast corridor. We call it the northeast part of the United States, where historically our country began. So that is where I'm from. I had a very diverse childhood. It was pretty close to 50% Black, 50% white schools that I went to, which was great because I didn't have this fear of not seeing other people that look like me. I didn't have that fear because I grew up in a very diverse environment. I understand that there's quite a few people where if they're raised around a lot of other people that look like themselves, it's very scary to go abroad or to move or to change. So I want to preface everything with that so much boils down to your childhood and those experiences and how comfortable and confident you feel. So I was in a diverse education system, but my parents were very traditional Black parents. They were not interested in their baby traveling all over the world. So in high school, I remember wanting to do the study abroad excursions that, all the Caucasian students were signing up for and were willing to do. But there were never, almost never any Black students that signed up for those experiences. And I realized a lot of that was because they were scared. It wasn't something that we did back then. For a long time, it was because we were fearful because we were dealing with enough racial inequalities and injustice in the States. We didn't want to have to go to another country and experience it. And another reason was, the money. It was expensive. It was a lot of things that we couldn't afford. And even if we did, we didn't think it was something that was important. So what ended up happening, my sister studied languages and she did some traveling first. So that paved the way for me. And I purposely went to university and studied international business at Penn State, which required a study abroad program for me to finish. So that was the way I had to trick my parents so I could go abroad. So I went abroad and I lived in France and I had an amazing time. I traveled all over Europe. And I remember when I came back, I wasn't the same. I completely changed. It was just one semester. My French really wasn't that good. I didn't take my French learning seriously, but I was a completely different person. And my mother noticed it right away when I came off the plane. Back in those days when you can see someone come off the plane and they were waiting for you at the gate, she said, oh my goodness, my daughter's different. So after I did that, I had the travel bug and I did Peace Corps for a short stint in Nicaragua. And that was an amazing experience because I got an opportunity to see what it was like to live in a developing country, which I learned a lot of very, very difficult lessons. Something that I think everyone needs to experience. For example, not wasting food and appreciating what you have. And, a lot of these things that we take for granted when you're born and raised in rich environments that I didn't anymore. Like those days were over after living there, but I had a wonderful experience. Then after that, I came back to the States. I went to graduate school. And I remember after finishing 2 master's degrees and teaching, I was a certified teacher teaching in public school outside of Washington, D.C., which was like AOL area. The apartments were so expensive that I was $1,500 away from qualifying for Section 8 housing. And I did everything right. Back then everyone told you, just don't get pregnant, study hard, work, save your money, go to school. I did all those things and more. And I remember being so depressed that I'm working a full-time job as a teacher, licensed teacher in the community. And I was just $1,500 away from qualifying for Section 8 housing. So 9/11 happened and the real estate prices dropped. So I was finally able to afford a 1-bedroom apartment. So, but at that time, I still had to teach my day job. The county asked me to teach night classes to these kids' parents who couldn't speak English because I was an ESL teacher. And then I also tutored. So I was hustling just to be able to afford that 1-bedroom apartment. You would think I was like in San Francisco or something. And this was just Northern Virginia at the time outside of DC. And I remember that one evening when I was just fussing about everything. And there was a woman there, older woman there. And she heard that I had lived in other countries. And she said, you know what? I just got out of international teaching because I lost all of my retirement in the .com bust. But she said, you're young, you should go overseas. So she connected me with an international teaching organization that places teachers in international schools called International School Services out of Princeton, New Jersey. And they happened to have a fair and a school was there, oil school was there for Indonesia. And I did an interview, I got the job, and I moved to Indonesia. So then I was in Indonesia for 2 years. It was a really great experience, very different, a rich oil compound. We all, parents, kids, teachers, everybody, we all lived together. And after 2 years, then I came here to Taiwan, and I've been in Taiwan for almost 16 years now. So that's just a little rundown of my travels and all that.
16 years is a long time. You're what we call an OG expat now. You're an experienced. What is it about the culture there? What is it that keeps you there? What do you enjoy? Obviously, you've embraced it and you've settled in, and this is your life. What can you identify, like one thing that, I know we all do, but I was anxious to hear, your take on it. What is it about that community that keeps you?
The people. And I've traveled to around 30 countries, more or less. And the people here, nothing like it anywhere else in the world. That's what keeps me here.
We do.
Just warm and friendly and safe. And, it's just, there's so many aspects to it, but to sum it up in one thing that you asked, the people.
And along those lines, I'm sure you're aware that right now in the world, there's this, there's this perception of the Asian community, that's being shown, presented showcased in a negative light.
Mhm.
What do you say to that for those people that say, "Oh my God, how could you live in a country where they're all Asians?"
Well, I think a lot of what's going on, at least from the United States, a lot of the Asian hate crimes stem from it the coronavirus being mislabeled as a China virus, which we all know the last thing you want to do is label any kind of an illness to a location. We heard Spanish flu over and over and over again, but historians have said it actually originated from Iowa. But the Spaniards were the only ones that, took charge and brought it to international media attention. And that's the reason why we call it the Spanish flu. So labeling a disease, an illness based on the location is never a good idea. And the fact that people are, I don't want to say everybody, but I think that quite a few people don't have enough experience with Asian culture and Asian history. So they don't even know the differences between a Japanese person, a Chinese person, a Korean person, a Southeast Asian person. So they lump everybody all together, and okay, you're all Chinese because China's like the largest country. Yeah, everyone's just Chinese and we hate you because you brought this virus to us and whatever. What I have to say about that is that, I don't think Americans would like it if they were called Canadians. Canadians don't like it if they were called Americans or Mexicans. British people don't like being mislabeled as American because they started the English language. You just have to step back, be quiet. There's a reason why there's two ears and one mouth, and learn something.
Yep,
If you don't know, ask questions. Be nice, be kind, and ask questions.
That's a pretty good way to sum it up. Just a couple other quick things I wanted to ask you. Clearly, you've embraced the culture. What are some of the, besides the people that you mentioned, for someone who, wouldn't be thinking about, putting Taiwan on their list of destinations? What are some of, besides the people, how would you be received there as a foreigner, and not necessarily color, but just as a foreigner in general? The people are friendly, but the language, that's a difficult thing to maneuver, isn't it, when you first get there?
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the things I want to share with people about moving to a place, to Asia in general, is that you do have to understand that most Asian countries are homogenous. For the most part, they're homogenous, meaning that the people generally have very similar DNA, very similar physical characteristics. It's not like the United States or Europe or, a lot of Western countries where people have migrated and moved there, over the past 200 years. It's not like that in Asia. And that's something we really have to be respectful and understand. The second thing I want to share about Taiwan is different from other Chinese places because they're very, very open-minded, incredibly open-minded. They want to keep a lot of the traditional Chinese culture here, but at the same time, they're also trying to bring in a lot of liberal ideas, which can be difficult because they don't want to throw anything away. So they want to just take in and not throw anything away. So one of the examples that I can share is for example, they still have a very traditional Chinese culture, but they are also the first country in Asia to allow gay marriage. So that's huge.
Right.
That's huge for Asian culture. That is huge for Asian culture. So that's one of the things that I think that, we need to, we need to think about. So when people ask me, well, what's the difference between, like, how can, as a person, a foreigner living there, like, will I acclimate? I call Taiwanese people Chinese Californians. They're pretty open-minded. They're open to different ways of thinking. They're very laid back. A lot of new ideas and ways of doing things. It hits here pretty quickly, and either it takes off or it doesn't. And I think that's a big difference between here and mainland China, that in mainland China, you know, they have a different government set up in place where, you know, if it's something that may not work there, it doesn't go through. Whereas there's a lot of different types of culture and ideas and things that come through Taiwan, and that can cause a person to be less fearful if they're a foreigner, should they decide to come here. But if you are a person of color, that is something that you want to think about. I don't think you're going to have any problems here. You may have a few like you would anywhere, but personally, after Obama was president, I got a lot less questions about where I was from, how can I be American, you know, da 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 da, like all those things. Like they plummeted. They went down to like 5 questions a day to almost 5 questions a month, if that. So
Yeah, that is something that a lot of people probably don't think about, you know, and it doesn't matter what country. Even if you went to Africa as a Black person, you know, you're still a foreigner, and you just, you know, people are going to look at you as a foreigner. It doesn't matter where.
And they've even told me I wasn't Black, and I'm like, sorry, excuse me, you gotta like put the brakes on that. Yes, I am. No, you're not. Yes, I am. And then they had to like give me a whole education. And I'm just like, okay, we
Wow.
can agree to disagree on that. Because where I'm from and my history and where my experience, I am a Black woman, full stop. And every corner I turn, I'm reminded of that all the time. But to a lot of my African friends here in Taiwan, they're like, what a joke. Okay. We love the fact that you're all tied into the same struggle. We are Black, but they have a lot of other words and things they use to describe Black people that I don't, you know, for me and in my family, we're just Black American people.
Yeah, and really quickly, I wanted to ask you: is there a large expat community there in Taiwan?
Yes,
So,
large.
so you won't feel so disconnected. Someone
Oh,
who,
I'm completely disconnected. I don't see another foreigner sometimes for sometimes weeks because I live in a countryside, but it's like anything else. If you want to be in the capital, you're going to see a lot of foreigners. If
right,
you decide to be in the countryside like me, you're not going to see many foreigners. If you want to learn the language, you need to stay away from all the foreigners.
right, that's true, and that's a language that you really need to immerse yourself in.
Completely.
Totally,
Mandarin is hard.
but you do it so well. You speak like a native. So I wanted to talk about your book. You're an author, and you wrote a book. Just tell us a little bit about what made you decide to do that.
Okay, so my first book is called Speaking Seed, and this is the first book ever dedicated to foreign language public speaking. So many people, after my video went viral, they had so many questions about who I am, how was I able to learn Mandarin, what did I do, what were the tips and tricks. So I wrote this book, which is half biographical, autobiographical, and half how to, about how to make speeches in a foreign language and how making speeches actually accelerates your foreign language learning. So many people think that I'm just this master like you do in speaking Mandarin. But honestly, at the time that I recorded that, I was maybe a 4 or 5 out of a 1 to a 10, 4 or 5. And why? It's because giving presentations really helps you hone your pronunciation and your fluency. And you're able to communicate with so much confidence.
I was going to say that in your
So
confidence. Yeah.
so much confidence. So I have a job where I teach cultural intelligence and cultural immersion, and I do keynotes, but I also have a day job as well where I coach and train people how to give speeches in their non-native language, which is usually English. And they say often that, wow, it really makes a difference. Like now that I've been so nervous and had to give this presentation in front of like other people, when it's just, I have to just do normal conversation with people on the street, it's easy. It's not so nerve-wracking because I've already crossed that hurdle. I gave like a presentation in English, like in front of all these people. So I learned this trick, and Toastmasters helped me, of course. And this is the first book. The second book that I have, and that's in English and also traditional Mandarin. And the second book that I have called To Lead, Success Strategies for Women, it focuses mainly on leadership. And I wrote a chapter focusing on cross-cultural leadership. During my time here in Taiwan, I did an incredible amount of leadership work, not only for my jobs, but also for Toastmasters, where where I served a division with 3 areas, 11 clubs with a couple of hundred people, everybody local Taiwanese for the most part. And it was challenging, just, delegating work, communicating, getting everybody on one page. But I also did work in Indonesia where I had people under me, and to a lesser extent when I was in Nicaragua. So I decided, with everything going on in Zoom and everything being virtual, that it would really help people these days that are managing global teams, that I was invited to write a chapter focusing on cross-cultural leadership. So that is what I wrote here in Call to Lead. So it's available on Amazon now. I'm chapter 10.
Okay, and we will be giving you a plug underneath that.
Please.
We're going to add a link up below the video to both of your publications. The last thing that I wanted to ask you is something I ask all of my guests. If you were to give a piece of advice for someone who was sitting on the fence, who was looking to change their lifestyle, looking to move abroad, what would you say to them?
Caroline, that's very tough right now because of COVID. With COVID, it's tricky. The advice that I would give you, or to give anyone who's listening, has changed. With COVID now, I'm not saying that you should stay home and you shouldn't live your dreams and you shouldn't go off and travel and experience another culture if that's what your heart and your soul is urging you to do. By all means, do that. With that said, I believe at this point in time, this is a very tumultuous, precarious time. And should you decide to go abroad, do an incredible amount of research first. And then once you choose on a place that you're interested in, get a very stable job where, regardless of whether you can do the work remotely, you can do the work in person, you're still going to get that check, because you do not want to be stuck in a foreign country, where you're getting laid off because there's an uptick of COVID cases, and you're stuck in your house, you're not making any money, you don't want to be in that position. I've already talked to a few people who are expats that are in that position right now. You don't want to be there. You want to be in a position that there are guarantees in your contract that regardless of whether you're in person, online, you can do your work, you can do what you need to do, and that the country you're going to or the place you're going to has a government that has very good control over COVID. It's critical. You don't want to be in a place where there's no control, or that they don't have good healthcare system. That's another thing. You know, we think we got our shot and we're in the clear. That's not the case. We may need a booster in a year, you know, and if there are any anti-vaxxers that are listening, stay home. You can't travel. Full stop. Sorry, I have to just be, I have to be real here. If there are anti-vaxxers listening to this right now, my suggestion, you can't travel. Full stop. Stay home.
All righty then. Words of advice and wisdom from Diana. Thank you so much, Diana.
You're welcome.
I
You're welcome.
appreciate you sharing your story with us, and we will leave the links. Oh, and if someone wants to connect with you, how can they connect? How can they do so?
The best way that they can connect with me, they can connect with me through Instagram. They can send me a message through Instagram or my business Facebook page.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. All the best to
you.
you in Taiwan.
Thank you,
Lots
Thank
of
you,
blessings.
Caroline.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.